الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبو القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعن الله الدائم على أعدائهم من الأولين والآخرين. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bi thana'ik. Alayka minni salam Allah ala ma baqit wa baqiya al-layl wa an-nahar. For the return of our Imam, please recite a loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Yesterday, you will recall that we spoke about the importance of thinking for ourselves, of being free in this world, meaning to make our own choices and understand the reasons why we're making them. Imam Hussain alayhi salam, Imam Hussain deserves a loud salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When he arrived in Karbala, the Imam said, "An-nas abid al-dunya, wad-din la'ab ala al-sinatihim." People are slaves to this world, and religion is but a morsel upon their tongues, a morsel in their mouths, something which they chew and spit out as if it were nothing. What he's saying is, people don't take religion seriously. And yesterday we said that we should take religion seriously. We should reflect on Islam, on the usul al-din. And we said that we were going to look at the usul al-din of Tawheed, the unity of Allah, Adl, Allah's justice, Nabuwa, prophethood, Imama, succession to the Prophet, and Ma'ad, resurrection, the afterlife, in light of Imam Hussain and the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim as-salam. The foundation of Islam, if you remember the three questions we asked yesterday, we said, what were they? We said, where did I come from? Where am I going? And what am I doing while I'm here? What is my purpose in this world? Well, to answer the first question, we must turn to our origin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The existence of Allah, believing in the existence of a creator, is the cornerstone of Islam. If you do not have certainty about this, if you do not have sure belief that Allah exists, then you have nothing. You cannot have Tawheed if you do not believe Allah exists. You cannot have Adl, you cannot have Nabuwa, you cannot have Imam, you cannot have Ma'am, you have nothing. Unless we believe in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we cannot love Imam Hussain as he deserves to be loved. And we cannot honor Imam Hussain as he deserves to be honored. And the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt were tireless, utterly tireless in their efforts to propagate the message of Islam from the existence of God all the way to Ma'ad. And so when the Imams met atheists, when they met people who did not believe in the existence of a creator and a Lord for this world, they would bring proofs, they would bring rational proofs to convince the person they were talking to that yes, you have a Lord, you have a God, you should worship Him. On one occasion, an atheist came to Imam Sadiq alayhi and the atheist said to the Imam, I don't believe in God, but I've heard you are a learned man. Perhaps you can convince me. Imam Sadiq says, have you ever sailed upon a ship? Have you ever sailed upon a ship? And the man goes, yes, I'm a sailor. So he says, wow, then you must have been caught in a storm on at least one occasion. Yes. Have you ever been on a ship that has been wrecked in a storm? Yes. So you were on the deck when the ship was being thrown from side to side by the waves and battered by the winds. And you were there when that wave came crashing down that split the ship in two. Yes. And you were thrown overboard into the ocean and you were struggling to keep afloat and you were reaching for anything, even a piece of driftwood, to help you keep above the water. Yes. And tell me, did there come a wave so massive that you thought it would swallow you up? And you would never see the light of day again? Yes. And then Imam Hussain leans forward and he asks them, and what did you do when you saw that?
Subhanallah.
And in a voice that is little more than a whisper, the atheist replies, I called out, "Oh Allah, save me." And the Imam says, the fact that you had this hope in your heart that there was a higher power that could save you, does that not tell you that you have a creator who puts that instinct in your heart? Salawat. Belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fitri, innate, something which is in the core of every human being. Belief in Allah is written into the very fabric of our souls. We may not always realize it's there, but everyone, when they are confronted with the reality of death, Ya Allah, save me. Look at Pharaoh. Look at Pharaoh. What were his last words? Al-An, now I believe in the God of Moses. As the ocean swallows him up and his soul departs his body. Now I believe in the God of Moses. Too late. But it was there. Pharaoh, one of the greatest tyrants and disbelievers the world has ever known. He said, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. I am your highest Lord. Words which almost no other tyrant has dared to utter, though they kept them in their hearts. Pharaoh said this openly, I am your highest Lord. And yet, when he saw his own life vanishing into nothingness, he said, now I believe in the God of Moses. Fitra, or human nature. The word fitra in Arabic is a beautiful word. It comes from fatara, which means to split. Literally, it means to split something. And from that, we get its meaning to create. We say that Allah is fatir as-samawati wal-ard. Because He split existence from non-existence. He split light from darkness. Reality from unreality. Origination. And so, when we say fitra, we are talking about the way in which something has been originated, the way in which something has been created. So, when we say that belief in Allah is fitri, we mean we have been made in this way, that Allah has made us in a way that we will believe in Him. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He say? He says, Fitratullah allati fatara an-nasa alayha. The origination of Allah upon which He has originated mankind. Allah has created us with this fitrah. This fitrah hasn't come about by chance, it hasn't come about through evolution. We haven't dreamed it up. Fitrah, our inner nature as human beings, comes from Allah. And there are two qualities that all things fitri have in common. First, it is present in all human beings. All human beings, in all times and all places. Whether here in this hall right now, in London, or whether we go to a remote Pacific island somewhere, if we go to an island where no foreigner has ever set foot, and we find a tribe of people on that island, we will find this in their fitrah. They have the same fitrah, the same innate nature that Allah gave us. So fitrah does not change with circumstances. Fitrah, the essence of the human being, does not change with circumstances. It is always there. That doesn't mean it is always visible. Fitrah can be obscured. It can be buried under layer upon layer of social conditioning. But it is still, and this is the second quality, it is still known innately. You do not need anyone to teach you fitrah. You do not need anyone to come and tell you what fitrah is. You already know it in the depths of your own soul, in the depths of your own heart. You know your fitrah because your fitrah is part of you. It is the most fundamental part of you. You feel you are hungry because there are nerves in your stomach sending messages to your brain that you are hungry. In Ramadan, we all felt the pain of hunger. In some cases, we also hear the pain of hunger if you have a particularly noisy stomach. But we all feel hunger. No one needs to come and tell you you're hungry. And yet hunger is not something fitri. Hunger is not something fitri. Hunger is a sensation you have around your stomach. There's a sensation of emptiness in your stomach. You feel that hunger is part of you. You feel that hunger is gnawing away at your very core. You feel it swallowing you up from inside. You feel like you'd give anything for a sandwich. Especially this year. Ramadan was very long. I don't think there was any cases of violence, but, I'm pretty sure that the sandwich aisles in Tesco and Sainsbury's, for all of you who are at work, were, these were sacred places you would visit on the way home. But that's how intensely you feel hunger. And fitrah is more fundamental than that. Fitrah is more fundamental than hunger. You cannot get rid of it. You cannot get rid of fitrah. So fitrah should be obvious to anyone who reflects, to anyone who ponders. If you sit and you think deeply, you will find it. You will find it. And that is why Imam Hussain alayhi salam says in his dua for the day of Arafah, is there anyone more manifest than you, O Allah, that he might make you manifest to us? Have you ever disappeared so that we needed a guide to find you? Have you ever gone away to some far place such that we needed a trail in order to reach you, and we needed to follow a road in order to reach you? Surely not. Blind are the eyes that do not see you. Of course, he's not talking about the eyes in your head, he's talking about the eyes of your heart. He's talking about yaqeen. So Imam Hussain is saying the existence of Allah is so clear, it should not need proving, it should not need teaching. You should not need to teach someone that Allah exists. And yet, we are at this very moment talking about proving the existence of Allah. Proving the existence of Allah. So someone might doubt, is belief in Allah really fitri? Is belief in Allah really something that exists in every human heart, buried deep within? There's even an atheist with faith, or a lack of faith, as strong as Richard Dawkins, had a little piece of himself crying out, Ya Allah. How can we prove this? Well, first of all, we see that human beings, as we said already, when they're faced with death, when they're faced with difficulty, they turn to Allah. Imam al-Askari alayhi salam explains the meaning of the name Allah. He says the name Allah means the one to whom every created being turns to in times of need or difficulty, when they have lost hope in everything else. And so this atheist that we talked about in his debate with Imam Sakander Khalili salam, when he realized that all hope was lost, when nothing could save him, who did he remember? Allah. And so in his time of need and difficulty, when he saw that there was no other way out of that situation, he turned to Allah. Even though he thought, perhaps until a split second before that, he thought, I don't believe in Allah, I don't believe in God. But there was something deep inside of him, when he was confronted with the reality of his own death, that was able to uncover all, to remove all of the conditioning that he had put himself through, telling himself that he didn't believe in God, convincing himself he didn't believe in God. That confrontation with death was enough for that split second to bring him back, as it were, to consciousness, to bring him back to reality. Notice that he survived the experience, and yet he comes to Imam Hussain and says, I'm an atheist. He comes to Imam Hussain and says, I'm an atheist, even though he had experienced that. But when you are confronted with death, everything becomes clear. Suddenly priorities fall into place. You have a Lord and you want him to save you. But we also see, if we look around us, that people have a reverence instinct. The way that people talk about footballers or pop stars, the way they watch their every move, the way they copy them with their hairstyles and their clothing and even their manner of speaking. Is this not an act of reverence? Is this not a kind of ibadah? Are you not saying how great this person is, I want to be like them? So in this way we might even say that Fir'aun, even though he was kafir, even though he was a zalim, even though he was jabbar, he was a tyrant, when he said, Ana rabbukum ala, was he not saying he wanted to be like Allah? Was this not a twisted form of reverence? The fact that he recognizes this station and wants to obtain it? So yes, we see that people in all societies, even atheist societies, look at communist Russia, they said we don't believe in God. So why are all these statues of men everywhere? Why is there a statue of Karl Marx, a statue of Lenin, a statue of Stalin, and we're all supposed to respect these statues? Go to North Korea today. North Korea is a militantly atheist society, and yet you find a statue of who? Now, I don't remember which one it is. It's Kim Jong-il, the first one? You find a statue of Kim Jong-il. And if you are a foreigner visiting North Korea, you need special permission to visit North Korea. If you are a foreigner visiting North Korea, your Korean guides will take you to this statue so that you can lay a wreath of flowers at the feet of Kim Jong-il, the founder of North Korea. Is this not a kind of worship? And so we see that even when human beings are not worshipping their Lord, this instinct cries out for something to worship. This instinct cries out, I need something to bow down to. And so it gets diverted. In fact, if you look at every kind of sin, every sin that can be committed, the vast majority of them are man's healthy desires perverted to something else. What is fornication? Fornication is the natural desire. We are not Christians. The natural and healthy desire that men and women have for each other, twisted to something else. What is gluttony? What is overeating? Gluttony is a sin. If you eat more food than you need, if you eat and eat and eat, this is something bad. But if you don't eat food at all, you'll die. So you can see that even a sin like gluttony, it's what? It's a healthy desire diverted to something else. So even shirk, associating partners with Allah, it is the instinct of reverence diverted to something else. And so, even the fact that people deny God's existence and yet worship other things proves that they have it in them to worship Allah. But if belief in God is fitri, then how is it possible for people to deny it? If it's more real than hunger and thirst, how is it possible that people deny their own fitra, deny their own nature? Well, in a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that is narrated by all schools of Islamic thought. He says that every child is born upon fitrah. It is their parents that make them into Jews or Christians or fire worshippers, and into anything else as well. The meaning of this is what? That every child comes into the world with fitrah, but there are two components to what the child grows into. One is tabiat, the child's nature, his fitrah, and tarbiyat, his education, his upbringing. So yes, it is possible to divert people away from fitrah by conditioning them. What do you think goes on in our society? Every time you step out onto the street and you see a billboard, what do you think those adverts are there to do? Do you think those adverts are there for your benefit? To inform you that, oh, look at this wonderful product, it can make your life much better? That's not what those adverts are there for. Those adverts are not there to educate you. Those adverts are there to make you desire that product. Which is incidentally why you see so many products advertising using the female form. Or now even the masculine form. Because one of the strongest desires in the human being is the sexual desire. So they want to associate other things with that so that you'll buy their products. This is a form of conditioning. In extreme cases, for example, people who are taken away and locked in a room, and they have people who are experts in this. They will break down your personality piece by piece and put it back together again so that you're a completely different person. Don't ask me how, because I wish I knew. But they can do it. It's happened to people. The CIA knows how to do this, the KGB and the old Soviet Russia knew how to do this. This is what they would do. So it's possible to completely remake a person, whether in subtle ways, such as advertising and education, or through extreme measures like completely breaking down their personality. So yes, it's possible to obscure fitrah. But you cannot deny it. Allah in the Quran says, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكُمْ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ. When your Lord took out the descendants of the children of Adam from their loins and made them bear witness over themselves, أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ? Am I not your Lord? Am I not your Lord? This is before we even existed. This is our potential to exist. This very potential to exist, Allah addresses, am I not your Lord? أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ? قَالُوا, they said, what did they reply? بَلَا, indeed you are. And Allah takes this pledge with us. Why? أَن تَقُولُوا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ إِنَّ كُنَّا عَنْ هَذَا غَافِلِينَ. So that you will not say on the day of judgment, we had no idea about this. We were ghafilin. We were ignorant of this. We are unaware of this. And so fitrah exists in the heart of every human being to spur them to look for the truth, to search for Allah, so that on Yawm al-Qiyamah no one can say, I didn't know. I didn't know. Because Allah will say, but didn't you have this niggling feeling inside of you? Didn't you have this sense that there was more to life than this? And everyone, even the staunchest atheists, have this sense that there's something more to life. You don't get to become such a strong atheist as Richard Dawkins if you don't spend some time thinking about your existence. You can't, even though you may reach the wrong conclusions. Everyone has this instinct. They simply aren't convinced either way. They are not 100% sure there is no God, but neither are they sure that there is a God. And so, they don't worry about it. They see it as unimportant to their daily life. We recently had a census in the UK, I think it was 2011, there was a census taken, and a large number of people are now ticking no religion or no religious belief. Because they simply see that the existence or non-existence of Allah has no bearing on their day-to-day lives. So, they are practical atheists. They are practical atheists. Not because they are sure about their atheism, but simply because they have not yet seen a convincing reason to believe. But there's a question here. There's a question here. Whether people are staunch atheists or whether they're just practical atheists, they are practically atheists. If this is something fitri, then why are we trying to prove it to them? I'm about to give you some examples of arguments you can use. Why are we trying to, how can we prove this to them if it's something fitri? We just said that you cannot teach someone something that is fitri. No, but you can remind them. So when we make these arguments for God's existence, we are not telling them something new, we are reawakening something in their souls. Why do you think that the Quran is called a dhikra? A remembrance, a reminder for you. This is something, the truth of this is something you already know in your heart of hearts. This is just to remind you of the truth. And so when we make these arguments, we are reaching out to this fitrah. But how can we prove the existence of God? What are the ways for proving the existence of God? Now, remember yesterday, what did we say the criteria for belief was? Yaqeen, certainty. And so the arguments we use in order to reawaken this fitrah, they must give us certainty. They cannot be emotional arguments. They cannot be emotional arguments of God's existence. We cannot simply tell someone, oh, have faith. God will make you so happy. Well, that may be true, but believing in the tooth fairy may make me happy. Believing in all manner of weird and wonderful things may make me happy. Why should I believe in God? So we want to give them yaqeen. We aren't interested in whether belief in God at this stage will make them happy or not. We simply want to establish that it is the truth. The truth. And that is why they should believe in it. But when we want to prove the existence of God to someone, we should not think, if this is a question that often gets asked. There was a course that we did a few weeks ago, that I did, on proving the existence of God. And one of the main questions that was asked by different people in that course was, what's the best argument for proving God's existence? What's the best argument? As if there is one magical argument, that if we can just master this argument, and then we go and tell someone, the veils will be lifted and they'll go, hallelujah, I've seen the light. There is no such argument. I wish there was. It would be so easy. You just go and pow, instant theist, instant mu'min. But you can't. You have to assess the person you are talking to. Imagine you want to cross a river. Imagine you want to cross a river. How many ways are there to cross a river? You could try and swim across if the current's not too strong. You could get a boat. You could row yourself across. You could build a bridge. The question is, how much luggage do you have with you? And the same is true for proving the existence of God. So there are some people who really, if you give them a simple argument for the existence of God, it'll click. And they'll say, yes, I see it now. I see it now. God does exist. But a lot of people will have more severe doubts. They'll have heavier doubts. They'll have more baggage to take across. It's going to take more than simply asking them to think for a moment to convince them of God's existence. And so people like this, well, you can't expect them, you can't just swim them across. You might need a boat. You might need to build a steel bridge across if they have a lot of doubts. So just as there are different ways of crossing the river, and each has its advantages and disadvantages. Some of them are simple, like a boat or swimming across, but they're not capable of bearing a lot of weight. On the other hand, there are other ways of crossing a river which are more complex, like the bridge, but they take time and preparation and a lot of effort to construct. And so proofs for the existence of God, the proofs for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are much the same as this. So when you're speaking to someone, or even when you're looking for your own purposes, when you want to know for yourself does Allah exist or not, you have to look at different kinds of arguments and see which argument will convince you or convince the person you are talking to the most. There is no one magic argument. Each argument is good for a different kind of person. Imam Ali alayhi salam. Imam al-Muwahhideen, the leader of the monotheists. When he was talking to a Bedouin, now a Bedouin, in those days, even today, Bedouins are people that live out in the desert, in tents, they have animals. Today some of them also have 4x4s, but in those days, their lives were even simpler. And the Bedouins, in the time of the Prophet, and Imam Ali, and all of the Imams, the Bedouins were known for being simple people. They weren't well educated, most of them could not read or write, they had very powerful memories. But for all intents and purposes, if you called someone a Bedouin, you were calling them a barbarian. You were calling them, in English we would say a Philistine, like someone who's uncultured. And so if you go to a Bedouin, if Imam Ali went to a Bedouin with a complex philosophical proof for the existence of God, what would happen? The Bedouin would just go, what? What are you talking about? That makes no sense. Those are just lots of long words you put together. That doesn't convince me. And he'd be right. Such a proof would not be convincing to a Bedouin. So what does Imam Ali do? He says to a Bedouin, now remember, Bedouins are people who live in the desert. They live with animals, they're in touch with nature. He says to the Bedouin, camel droppings indicate the passing of a camel. Footprints indicate the direction of travel. The sky has stars and the earth has valleys. Do these not point towards the all-hearing and all-seeing one? This the Bedouin understands. Yes, because the Bedouin spends his life looking at footprints and signs on the ground. They have to track animals they want to hunt. They need to know which way another tribe has gone, either to attack them or to avoid them. And so a Bedouin understands the idea of looking for traces. And so Imam Ali says, yes, but what about the stars and the valleys? Are they not Allah's traces? Are they not indications of the Creator, the all-hearing, the all-seeing one? Now there are two arguments, just two arguments I very briefly want to mention. The first is reflecting on God's signs, and this is a very simple argument. This is similar to the argument Imam Ali used. Because in the Quran, you find Allah mentions His ayat a lot. His signs. In the creation. He says, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the alternation of night and day, and the ships that sail upon the sea, with profit to men, and the water that Allah sends down from the sky, with which He revives the earth after its death, and scatters therein every kind of animal, and the changing of the winds, and the clouds disposed between the sky and the earth. In all of this are surely signs for a people who ya'qilun, who apply reason. And so, when we look at Allah's signs, what is Allah asking us to do? He's saying, look at all of this around you. Look at how harmonious this is. You live in a world that makes sense. Notice how He mentions ships sailing on the sea. Now, Allah is not saying, I created those ships and they've always been there and you just found them. No, Allah knows that it is men who build ships. But what is it that allow the ships to travel from A to B? The laws of physics and the weather. Allah is saying, look at the system of the universe, how elegant it is, and tell me it has come about by chance. If you were to find a book on a shelf and open it and to start reading without looking at the cover or any of the pages, you would know that this book had an author. And so when we see the universe all around us, on every leaf of every tree, on every cloud, on every atom, is written La ilaha illallah. So this is one way of proving God's existence. And obviously you can go into more detail on this, but I'm just summarizing here. Something, if you're interested, you can go away, there are books you can read on this. The second argument I want to bring is the argument, and this is a philosophical argument, the argument from contingency. It's called the Burhan al-Imkan. And Allah says, in the earth are signs for those who have conviction. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ, and in your own selves. أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ, will you not perceive? Now, just a point here. Have you noticed Allah switches? He says, in the earth are signs for those who have conviction. And then suddenly, and in yourselves as well. So he's talking about them, and then he switches to the second person. He switches to a direct address to you. It's as if Allah is jumping out at you and saying, and in yourselves as well. أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. Now, if we look at our own selves, what do we notice? We notice that we could not have brought our own selves into existence. But let's go deeper. Let's go to the very building blocks of the universe. And what are the three fundamental particles we learn about in chemistry in secondary school? Protons, neutrons, and electrons. Now, there are particles, yes, smaller than protons and neutrons, but for the purposes of this argument, let's say that you have protons, neutrons, and electrons, and everything in the universe is made up of those particles. Can a proton, a neutron, or an electron bring itself into being? No. Can it bring another thing like itself into being? No. So where did it come from? If we look at the very fundamental building blocks of the universe, we see that they have two properties. They are limited and they are dependent. They are existentially needy. They need to derive their existence from somewhere else. So we ask where they come from. Now let's say an atheist gives an answer. He says quantum, something to do with quantum physics. Then what do we have to say? Well, we have to say, well, where did that come from? And we have to keep asking where things came from until we arrive at a being that is neither limited nor dependent. And as soon as you have a being that is neither limited nor dependent, you have the infinite, the absolute, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is only by having firm belief in the existence of Allah, founded upon fitrah, founded upon our innate nature, that we can hope to follow the example set by Imam Hussain and his companions. And we can only obtain this firm belief through reflection and contemplation. Only in this way can we be sure that we are not slaves to this world. That we are not slaves to this world. One person who had this belief, one person who had this firm belief, was a companion of Imam Hussain called Habib ibn Muzahir. Now Habib ibn Muzahir, on the day of Karbala, according to some narrations, was 75 years old, which means he was a companion not just of Imam Hussain, not just of Imam Hassan, not just Imam Ali, but the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Habib ibn Muzahir fought in all the battles of Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali. He fought in all of his battles, and he saw his friends and companions martyred in those battles, and he became sad. And so one day he goes to Imam Ali. In fact, he would frequently go to Imam Ali and ask about shahada. He would ask about martyrdom. He would ask, will I be honored with martyrdom? And Imam Ali would say, yes, you will be, but not yet. And we have some indications that he had been told, he was one of the close companions of Imam Ali, and he had been told things about the future. And so one day, when he is sitting down for food with his wife in Kufa, and there is a knock at the door, he asks, who is it knocking at the door? He calls out, and from behind the door answers, I am the messenger of Imam Hussain to you. He opens the door, and he's handed a letter. And on that letter he reads the words of Imam Hussain, the grandson of the Prophet, saying, Habib ibn Muzahir, I am coming to you, I need your assistance. I need your help. And his wife is sitting, eating, and she asks, what's the matter? Who is at the door? And he says, there was a letter from Hussain ibn Ali. And she said, what did it say? He wants me to go to him. He's coming. And he needs my help. And he wants to see how his wife feels about it. Because he knows. He's 75 years old. He's been waiting all of his life for Shahada, and his letter comes, and he knows he must go and he will not return. And so he says, he's asking for my help, and his wife, he doesn't appear happy, and so his wife asks him, do you not want to go and help Hussain? And he says, I don't know, I have to think about it. And she becomes upset and she begins to weep, but not out of sorrow at the thought of her husband leaving. She weeps, Habib, Ibn bint Rasulullah, the son of the daughter of the Prophet, writes to you asking for help. And this is how you respond. Oh Habib, have you forgotten what his grandfather said? That he is one of the Sayyida Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. Have you forgotten what his grandfather said? That Hussain is from me and I am of Hussain? Hussain has sought your help. So do not fall short. Do not fall short in going to him. Go to him. And go to him from me. Go in my place. Go in my place. Because I am a woman and I know nothing of war. I cannot fight in battle, so you go instead of me. And when you meet Hussain, give him my salams. Give him my salams. Allah, the faith of this woman. She doesn't need to think for a moment. She's saying, go to Hussain. He needs you. And so, Habib ibn Muzahir leaves Kufa under cover of darkness because Ibn Ziyad has complete control over the city and he's looking for anyone trying to leave to help Hussain. He wants no one to reach Hussain, and so Habib ibn Muzahir leaves under cover of darkness. And he reaches Imam Hussain and his camp at Karbala on the 6th of Moharum, in a few days' time. And when he arrives, he tells Hussain, Hussain, I have some tribesmen from my tribe, the Banu Asad nearby. I can go and bring them, they will help you. And he goes to his tribe and he convinces them to come, but there is a spy amongst them who warns Umar ibn Sa'ad, la'natullahi alayh, that these horsemen are coming, that this tribe is coming to help Hussain. And so Umar ibn Sa'ad ambushes them and drives them away. And Habib ibn Muzahir comes back to Umar and says, I'm sorry, I brought them, but it wasn't enough. We were ambushed. I could not help you. And Hussain says, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. We are satisfied with God's decision. And Habib ibn Muzahir, on the day of Ashura, was one of the foremost people who argued with the soldiers of Umar ibn Sa'ad and responded to their taunts. And he was given command of the left flank of Hussein's forces. He was given command of the left flank. And when the time for prayer came and Imam Hussain asked for respite, he asked the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad to give them a few minutes to say their prayers. A man called Hassin ibn Tamim called out from the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad, it makes no difference, your prayers will not be accepted. And Habib ibn Muzahir becomes angry. This is the man who fought with Imam Ali in all of his battles. He says, are you saying that the prayer of Ali Muhammad will not be accepted, but your prayer will, Ya Himar, O donkey? And so, at this point, Hassin steps forward to fight him, and Habib ibn Muzahir is smiling. And before he goes into battle, one of his companions says, Habib, why are you smiling? This is a battle, we're going to die. This is not a time for happiness. And Habib looks at him, and yet he almost laughs. He says, we are about to become shuhada. What better time is there to laugh than now? This is someone who has conviction in his Lord. And Habib goes forth and he's like a lion. He's a man of 75 years, and yet the enemy scatter before him. According to some accounts, on his way to Hassin ibn Tamim, he slays 30 men. And he's fighting with Hassin, this man who he's had this taunting match with. And he strikes Hassin down from his horse. He knocks Hassin off his horse. And soldiers from Umar ibn Sa'ad's army rush to help him, to stop Habib ibn Muzahir from killing him. And Habib ibn Muzahir is fighting them, and none of them can better him until one man from the tribe of the Banu Tamim strings an arrow and draws it and shoots Habib ibn Muzahir in the chest, and he goes down onto the ground, and the blood is gushing from his wound. And yet this man of 75 years is still trying to get up, and he's saying, Ya Aba Abdullah, I will not abandon you while I still draw breath. And then Hussain ibn Tamim comes and strikes him on the head. And he's still trying to get up. And a third man comes and finally cuts off his head. And they begin to quarrel over who gets to take the head to Ibn Ziyad and claim the reward. And when his head is brought to Kufa by his killer, Hussain ibn Tamim, his son, Qasim ibn Habib, sees the head. And he goes to this, he goes after Hussain ibn Tamim, the killer of Habib ibn Muzah. He goes after him, he follows him. And Hussain becomes anxious. He says, what do you want? Why are you following me? Qasim ibn Habib says, nothing. He says, no, there's something, Ya Bunay. My boy, tell me, what's the matter? And Qasim ibn Habib says, that is the head of my father. And I would ask that you give it to me so that I may bury it. So that I may bury it with his body. And Hussain says, I will not give you his head because I want to take the reward from Ibn Ziyad. And Qasim ibn Habib says, Ibn Ziyad may reward you for it, but Allah never will, for you have killed someone better than you. And then Qasim ibn Habib followed this man everywhere he went until he found an opportunity to take revenge and avenge his father. But I ask you, brothers and sisters, after the Battle of Karbala, why was there no one there to ask for the head of Imam Hussain when it was brought through the streets of Kufa and the streets of Damascus, and the people were looking at the head of the grandson of the Prophet? Thousands of Muslims, and they would not ask, give us the head of Ibn bint Rasulullah that we may bury it. Why did Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam have to wait for so many years before he saw the head of Ibn Ziyad brought to him? Brothers and sisters, please raise your hands for dua. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma kun li waliyika al-hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala aba'ih fi hadhihi as-sa'a wa fi kulli as-sa'a waliyan wa hafidhan wa qa'idan wa nasira wa dalilan wa 'ayna hatta tuskinahu ardaka taw'a wa tamati'ahu fiha tawila bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. وصل يا رب على محمد وآله الطاهرين.